Okay, what a beautiful morning it is. All right, so I came out to the hills to look around where Uriah might have been during this time when he was in with the hill tribes. I found a little place where people are still raising the sheep and the goats and things like that. And so if they try, there's one big one behind me that keeps looking at my shirt. If it comes up, just let me know and it'll try to nibble on my shirt and I'll need to know. This is the Dodgers shirt because I'm going to hopefully fly home tonight just in time for the game so I can watch the game two of the World Series tonight. If you watched last night, you know that the Dodgers won. All right. So here we are. We are going on to our next chapter, which is chapter 12 and 13 today. We know that the boys they've been spared. They're not going to be sacrificed and killed because of being traitors or spies. They're looking at them as they're going to treat them as guests, but kind of maybe sort of prisoner guests because something's going on. Some kind of plan is taking place. All right. So let's get into this chapter 12 and 13 today. The Lord is a man of war. That's the chapter title. In the morning, a fattened lamb was slain in the barnyard in honor of Barak of Kadesh and Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth. All day, the hired herdsman tended the sheep alone while the family of Hushai prepared for the celebration to come. Fires were lit and the meat was prepared in great kettles with the garlic leeks and beans that accompanied it. Leah baked bread in an oven, and Tamar made honey cakes on a pan over a fire of coals. That night, all the family of Hushai, gathered in the main tent, together with the guests. The servants and herdsmen clustered about outside for their share in the feasting and entertainment. There were two other guests that night, a man and his wife, who had traveled in from the east and planned to pitch their tents in the plain not far from Kadesh. The man was a Kenite named Heber, not a Hebrew, but his wife, whose name was Jael, was a woman of Israel. Heber was a shifty-eyed, smiling man who reminded me of the Babylonian traders of my childhood. He told everyone of his admiration for the Hebrews and his hatred for the Canaanites. And you can imagine that he probably also tells the Canaanites that he hates the Hebrews when he's with Canaanites. He's one of those types of people. My Jael can tell you what they are, he said. She was stolen from her family by their troops when she was only a child. Out of pity, I bought her from them and made her my wife. But the woman Jael did not speak at all, and only once looked at her husband with such hatred that my blood turned cold. And when he spoke to her, his voice was harsh and cruel. Looking at this silent, dark woman, I thought of my sister Anitis, and for the first time, I was glad I knew for certain that she was dead. And what he means by that is, life is very brutal in the ancient world, and anything can happen. And he's glad that he doesn't have to worry about her being mistreated by people. And so now he knows that she's not being abused or mistreated. Though Deborah was a woman, she was served first that night, for she was a holy woman. When family and guests had been satisfied, the rest turned over to the servants. The meal was not silent tonight. Everyone seemed to have been seized with a strange excitement or joy. Among the servants was one who could play the bagpipes and one who handled the drums with great skill. When the food was gone, the men began to dance the ancient dances. The dances, they said, were pleasing to their God. One by one, while the others clapped their hands, stamped their feet, and uttered blood-curdling cries. "Do you know the dances?" I asked Jotham, clapping my hands with the rest, for none could resist the pipes and the drums and the stamping feet. "I knew them once," he said. And for a moment his eyes gleamed at the memory. Then his face saddened and he drew back. But it was a long time ago. When they had tired themselves with dancing, Deborah offered us all a treat, a brew of the tea leaves of which she was so fond. Jotham's uncle, she said, had given her first taste of the leaves as a gift on one of his trading trips inland. But even this could not spoil her pleasure in them. She brewed the drink with her own hand with much ceremony, then passed the pot around but to each of us for a sip of the steaming, fragrant liquid. While our hearts were warm from the pleasant drink, Barak asked her for some of the old songs and stories. She is a learned woman, he explained to us, and knows all the histories of the tribes. Deborah had with her a harp, which she strummed softly as she began her stories. The light of the torches was on her face, making it seem somehow as ancient as the tales she told. Stories of Abraham, the mighty chief from the outlands of Samaria, who had been guided to Canaan by the great sky god El. 1,000 years before those whose people were the fathers of so many of the Canaanites and desert men. Stories of the shepherd chief Jacob and his sons, whose people had been lords in Egypt for 200 years, of Joshua, the mighty, and Moses, the lawgiver, who had been a prince of Egypt. The Red Sea song, said little Aphia, who was half asleep. Sing the Red Sea song. There was a sudden silence. Every voice and every movement ceased. I saw that what little Aphia had said had some strange meaning among these people. I heard the wife of Heber the Kenite catch her breath and saw her eyes come to life for the first time. Heber himself was watching with an eager, puzzled look. Deborah sat with her lowered head for a moment, then seemed to make a choice. It is Barak, she said gently, who must sing the Red Sea song. And Barak rose to his feet and sang the song, while Deborah struck great chords on her harp. This is the song, which I will not sing, but I'll read it. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his hosts hath he cast into the sea. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Sing ye to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. Soft murmurs and even sobs rose among the people while the song was sung. Barak stood like God himself, and it did not matter anymore that he was not tall. And suddenly I knew what their secret must be. For this, I was sure, was a battle song, to be sung only in a time of war. Jotham had said they had no leader. It seemed they had found one. Okay, so chapter 13 is starting to look, based on that song, that they're getting ready for some kind of war. Remember, the Hebrews are being completely mistreated by the Egyptian rulers and by the Canaanites who live in Canaan, being ruled by Egypt. And the Canaanites come in and take them whenever they want. Slave raiders come in and just steal them. They just take. So imagine living out on the plains like this, raising goats and sheep, and then having people come in and just take your brother or your sister or your mom or your dad. They just take people and then take them, turn them into slaves to serve them. It's pretty bad. All right, chapter 13. The raiders, not the Raiders, the football team, but people that come in and take what they want. That night when Jotham slept, I slid silently from my bed of robes. Deborah, Barak, and Hushai I knew were not asleep. They had gone to Deborah's tent, and there was a light within. I sneaked along the ground without a sound, as I had learned to do at home, and stretched myself along the tent pins, one ear to the ground and the other listening for every word from within the tent. 3 dark shadows moved eerily on the colored hangings. "There will be a council of the chiefs in Kadesh," said the quiet voice of Barak. "So it has come at last," said Hushai softly. "Yes," said the voice of Deborah. "Poor and scattered as we are, it has come at last. We have suffered slavery and death and the theft of our children. But when they command us to give our girls to the service of Astarte and build high places for Shan, the serpent, that is an insult to our God that we cannot endure, even if we are utterly destroyed." "We will not be destroyed," said Barak calmly. "We are not alone in this." "The ox was sacrificed," said Deborah, "and its portion sent to the chiefs of all the tribes in the old sign of war. But only you came to me, Barak. Only you were faithful." "The tribesmen in the south," said Barak, "and in the cities on the coast are men of property. They will not risk their wealth or their safety. But we are not alone. I have had word from runners. The chiefs of Issachar and Benjamin in the hills have heard us at last, and of Zebulun too. They will be in Kadesh within 3 days. 5 tribes," said Hushai, and I could see his shadow counting on its fingers. "Will that not give us 10,000 men?" My mouth fell open at this. 10,000 men was a great army. It was surely some mighty host against which they planned to rise. "And what of their chariots," said Deborah, "and their horses from Egypt?" "The horse and his rider," said Barak simply. "He hath thrown into the sea." He's referencing there the song he just sang. That he, meaning their God, will see to it that the chariots and the horses are useless in this war. That's showing a great sign of faith. I could almost see Deborah smile. "Yes," she said, "and God has told me in a vision that they will be delivered into our hands, but he has not told me how." "That," said Barak, "he has left to me." "It will be as it was in the days of Joshua the Great," whispered Hushai, "who leveled Jericho and drove out the Egyptian governors and raised the altar stones in Gilgal. The men of Israel will walk again in safety on the highways, and their stolen children will no longer die by the furnaces of Canaan, nor their strong men grinding in the mills." "We will raise our standard," said Barak, "on Mount Tabor, near the great salt lake. It will be a good place for men of the north and men of the south to gather. It will give us a stronghold and a place to retreat where their chariots cannot follow. The hills have always sheltered us. They were why we were not utterly destroyed even by the Egyptians." So they're going to go, the chariots can't go up over the rocks and things. So they're going to find safety in those hills, in those mountains, if the battle goes poorly. "God be with us all," said Hushai again. The talk was over, and 2 shadows lengthened as the men within the tent rose to their feet. In alarm, I uncoiled myself and began my silent slide back through the undergrowth, my head swimming with what I had heard. But as I moved, a shadow crossed me, and I could just make out in the darkness the figure of a man, dressed like a hired shepherd, hurrying away from the tent of Deborah. And so I knew that I was not the only one who had spied on that talk in the tent. But I could not see who it had been, nor could I speak of it to anyone without giving myself away. Heber the Kenite and his wife and servants left the encampment early in the morning. They were to pitch their own tents in the valley not far away. I stared after them as they left, wondering if one of them had been the shadow I had seen the night before. When I had watched them out of sight, I turned back to the tents, still thinking deeply, and into one of the most fearful and fateful days of my life. First, I quarreled, meaning he fought with Jotham, argued, not fistfight, so that he and I parted enemies that morning. This was the first bad omen. Next, I almost lost my life. It happened because Tamar and I had gone to a spring, meaning where the water comes up, fresh water, for more water during the midday meal, and had gotten out of sight of the others. I liked being with Tamar. She could do almost anything a man could do, but was gentle and kind as well. Besides, I liked to look at her. But this morning, I was thinking of many things, of what I had heard outside the tent of Deborah, of the bitter things Jotham had said to me, and of the things I had said to him. So I had little to say. Jotham is homesick, said Tamar suddenly, as if she had known what I was thinking. That's what is wrong with him. Homesick, I laughed. He hated Tyre. He only wanted to return to the tribes. But the people of Tyre are his people too, said Tamar wisely. In the ancient days before Abraham came, when the mother goddess ruled supreme in Canaan, they said that a child was more its mother's than its father's. Besides, he loves a woman of Tyre. Remember, he loves Mehetabel. How do you know that? I asked in amazed. She only smiled. If you're not careful, I said gloomily, you will grow into another one such as Deborah, and she is a fine lady, but one such is enough. Tamar was suddenly grave. I will never be like her. She is a woman of God. Which one? I asked angrily. But Tamar did not answer. He means which God? She's a woman of God, but which one? But Tamar did not answer. She was looking over my shoulder, and suddenly I blinked in wonder, for I saw that her skin had turned the gray color of an olive tree. I looked where she was looking. 4 men, strangers, were standing together not far away, and were looking us over, not menacingly, but in a calm, businesslike way. 2 of them had their heads together and seemed to be having a discussion. They have seen us, whispered Tamar. Can you imagine every time you see someone, you have to be fearful that they could be slave raiders and going to come get you? What is it? I asked her. Who are they? Lookouts from the Midianite caravan, said Tamar in a dead, hopeless voice. We heard they would pass here on their way to Harosheth, but I forgot. For a moment, the word Harosheth stuck in my mind. Then I forgot it, remembering that Jotham had said about the Midianite and Moabite and Amalekite raiders. They have grown great and prosperous by trading in men and women. For the first time, I understood what it meant to be a Hebrew shepherd in the hills of Canaan, constantly scared, constantly fearful that you were going to be turned into a slave, that your family was going to be ripped apart. Tamar, I said, run back to the others. Then I said, no, not that. They will only follow and catch you. If you lead them to the others, they may take everyone, for there will be more of them. Hide down behind that rock, and I will see what I can do. Tamar obeyed me, though I knew she had no hope. The men were coming toward us. I stood back against the rock so that none of them could slip around behind me. I picked up a heavy, jagged stone and swung the sling that all shepherds carry to protect themselves and their sheep. The men came slowly, none of them wanting to be the first one to get that stone. He's not just going to throw it at him, he's going to use a sling, which really makes it go a lot faster. One of them moved out ahead of the others, and I fitted the stone into the sling. Be wise, they called to me. You Hebrews are outside the law. Raise your hand against us, and you will be skinned alive in Harosheth. I swung the sling about my head and let the stone fly. It landed against the chest of the man in front, jerking him back, and he fell to the ground. The other three came together in a huddle. I picked up another stone. "Rush him," said one of the men. "Kill him if you must. The girl alone should bring a good enough price." I let fly another stone, which caught one of the men on the arm. He gave a great cry, but was not badly hurt. The three men came upon me in a rush. I had time to pick up my stave and was able to catch one of the men across the jaw and send him sprawling before it was torn away from me. The other two got hold of me. I felt my arms and body twisted, something in my back forcing me to my knees, and cried out in pain and terror. Suddenly I was jerked to one side, and then I felt myself free. The two men had forgotten Tamar. She had come out from behind the rock with a heavy stick and fallen upon the two of them. Never since that day have I thought that women are useless. Her face twisted and her eyes blazing. She brought the stick down upon the head of the first one, then the other, and they fell at her feet. But then it seemed as though she would not and could not stop. She stood over one of them like the war goddess Anath and struck him again and again, crying bitterly all the while. "Tamar, Tamar!" I protested, climbing to my feet. Got the club away from her and pulled her away. I made her run with me till we had gotten far enough from them to be safe, though if they were alive, they were surely not able to pursue us. Then we sat down to rest. Tamar doubled over and sobbing as if she would be shaken to pieces. "I hate them. I hate them. I hate them," she gasped. "They took my sisters and three of my brothers and sold them to Canaan, so that only Samuel, Ephiah, and I are left." So she's lost a lot of brothers and sisters to those slave raiders. "If I could kill them and all the men in all the Canaanite cities, I would do it." I know, I soothed her. I even stroked her hair, which felt very pleasant. I had never known a girl like her before. I thought of her being dragged, I thought of her being dragged away to the copper furnaces or one of the dark, airless weaving rooms and shuddered. I thought of what I had heard the night before in the tent of Deborah, and for the first time my heart exulted as if I had been one of them. He felt like he's a Hebrew too now. I even felt that someday I might come to understand Samuel. Remember her brother Samuel, who they don't like each other. And Samuel's angry. Well, now we know why Samuel's so angry. He has lost a lot of family members to these slave raiders. The sun was low in the sky by the time we rose to go. As we started back to the tents, her hand was in mine. So they were holding hands as they were walking back. It was thin and strong, but small and soft and warm as well. Jotham, I thought, I will find him and make it up with him. I know now why his heart is with these people, and I will help him all I can. But Jotham was nowhere to be seen, and it was Jabin who came to greet us. "Uriah Taran," he shouted, "I have helped to kill a wolf." And he told how, while we had been gone, an animal had attacked some strange sheep, and he had given the alarm and helped drive it off. He was swelling with pride. "Where's Jotham?" I asked him. His face fell. "He is gone." "Gone?" I cried. "Where?" "To Kadesh. Barak and Hushai are going to do something very important there, and Barak chose him to go too." He brightened a little. "Samuel wanted to be chosen. Barak said it was to be Jotham." So remember, Samuel's too angry. He's impertinent, he's rude, and he's being selfish. So Barak chose Jotham instead. My heart was heavy with disappointment, but I was glad Jotham had been chosen. Tamar's hand was still in mine, and I brightened too, thinking of the good day's work we too would have to tell about to the others. Out of the shadows came Samuel, and I opened my mouth to tell him the story of the day and receive his thanks for saving his sister, or his sister saving him. They saved each other, I guess. Let go of my sister's hand, said Samuel. My mouth still open, I stared at him. With a shock, I saw that his eyes were full of wrath. All his anger at Jotham for being chosen had been turned against me. Go to mother, he said to Tamar. For a moment, Tamar paused, but she was too tired now to stand against anyone, and after a moment she slipped away. Never speak to her again, said Samuel. I will speak to her whenever I like, I replied. Then I will kill you, said Samuel. She is my true sister, the child of my mother, and I have the right. He swung around and left me before I could speak again. I was filled with wrath. Even the water from the spring tasted bitter to me. Perhaps that was the real reason for what I did that night, even more than the memory of my father. The next chapter is called The Betrayal. So we kind of get the idea of what might end up happening. So now, mainly what is happening is we know that that Uriah heard a little bit about the battle plan, that there is a war coming, and that he also got to experience firsthand what it's like to be a Hebrew. And he's also learning, he's learning that he has a love for Tamar, there's no doubt about that, and respect for these people, these Hebrews. And he feels like he could easily be one of them, be one with them. But he's going to commit betrayal. It's a very difficult situation to be in. We'll talk about that more later. All right, guys, I better go feed the goats, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.